Hi, and welcome to Stamp with Jini. Today I'm going to share with you this lovely little half hexagon pop-up card that creates this hexagon shape to create a scene. I've used the friendly FINS stamp set and the coordinating dies to create this fun little card that you can set on your mantle for display. So let me set this aside and I'll show you how I got started. Okay, I'm going to start with my blending brushes here, and I've got my crumb cake and summer splash, and I'm going to start by bringing the crumb cake in. I'm going to pick up my color with my brush, tap off, and then add a swirl of color along the bottom of my cardstock. I'm going to do that again. Now, I'm not overly worried about a little bit of strength here to the color because this is sand for this project, and I figure it looks different based on the way it's laying in the water. So I've got that finished, and I'm quickly going to bring over this small strip here and do the same thing. Loading up my brush, swirling over the top until I get the color I'd like and the strength of color on here, and I can turn that around and add color in different places. There we go. I've got that strip done, and I'm ready to move on to the top water portion of my scene. So I'm going to pick up this summer splash, and I'm going to start off my cardstock, since this is a fairly juicy pad, and then swirl as I go, bringing it over that sand slightly, since I want it to overlap. And all this piece of grid paper is doing is protecting my workspace so that I don't end up with excess ink on it. There we go. Once I have my panel done, I'm going to bring in the small strip again and repeat. Just like I did with the sand, this will be the top of my water. And of course you have two sides here, so if you get it a little thicker than what you'd like and bolder, you can flip it over and try again. I'm happy with that, and I'm ready to do my stamping. Okay, I'm going to start with my strip of cardstock here and my dolphin outline, and I'm going to stamp this twice here on my cardstock. And then I'm going to bring in my solid image here and my scrap paper. I'm going to ink that up, stamp it off, and line it up with my dolphin outline and stamp. And I'm going to repeat with the second dolphin, making sure I get a good coverage on my stamp, and line up and stamp. Good, that one's a little off, so I'm going to repeat on the end here and do a third one. There we go, that one's a little better. I've got my dolphins done. I'm going to bring in my sentiment panel. Let's see, I think I'll leave this on here like so. I'm going to bring in my summer splash, ink up my happy birthday, and stamp it over here on the left, slightly left of center, because I want to bring in that dolphin image and give a little nod to that dolphin on the back also. Stamp off, line up, and stamp. There we go. I've got my sentiment panel done, and I'm ready to start scoring. Okay, I'm going to start with the cutting for this project, so I'm going to bring in my large panel here, and I'm going to cut off a 1/2 inch on each side. So I'm going to place this on the 1/2 inch mark, close it, and cut. And then I'm going to slide that over and cut on the 1/2 inch mark here on the other side. There we go. I've got 3 pieces here, and I want to kind of keep them in the orientation of which they are cut. Then I'm going to bring in the sand piece here, and I am going to cut it into 3 pieces. I'm going to cut 1 1/2, slide it over and cut 1 3/4, and then my last piece should be 1 1/2. So I want to keep those in order also. like so. And I'm going to do the same with the ocean strip that I created. Cutting at 1.5. And 1 3/4. Next, I'm going to bring in the strips, and this time I'm going to score, so I'm going to slide that dark blade up and bring in my light blade, and I'm going to set this on the 3/4 inch mark here and score. And then I'm going to slide that to 2.5 inches, 4.5 inches. And now if you want to score the last 3/4 inch mark, you can score at 6 1/4, or you can leave this and fold it with your fingers so that you've got a little bit of an adjustment on your piece. I've got the first piece scored, and I'm going to bring in my second piece and repeat that on the second piece. I've moved my cutting blade out of the way, and I'm going to score at 3/4, 2.5, and 4.5. And finally 3/4. I'm going to show you the difference between the scored piece and the unscored piece when assembling. I've got my card base now, and I'm going to score it at 3/4 inch on each end. So I'm going to place this one on 3/4 inch. I bumped that a little bit, so I'm straightening it out and bumping it up against the top here. 3/4, and then at 4 3/4. Like so. And I'm ready to move my trimmer. I'm going to take my 3 pieces here of gray granite and score on the fold lines. This is simply going to allow me to get those creases nice and sharp with my bone folder before I start assembling. If you prefer, you can do this after the fact. That's up to you. And once again, remember, one of those I did the 3/4 on each end, and the one I didn't. I'm going to open this back up, and I am going to adhere my panels down to the card. I'm going to adhere these down flat, so I'm going to take my multi-purpose quickly and adhere these in place. This one goes on the right. Adding just a little bit of adhesive. I don't want it oozing out too much. And I thought the gray granite kind of looked like the metal frame or the acrylic that goes around an aquarium. So it adds a little bit of detail to the card. I'm going to make sure I've got the top and the bottoms aligned, and then adhere. And then I'm going to bring in these strips and add the 3 pieces. I'm going to add the smaller 2 on the right and left sides, and the larger piece in the center. There we go. And I'm going to repeat that process with the top 3 pieces. Okay, I've got those done, and I'm ready to allow them to dry. So I'm going to flip over and adhere my signature panel. Now, if you prefer to do this after you've signed it, you can wait until you're ready to send, but I'm going to do this now so that it's a little easier to adhere. I'm going to flip this back open and over, and we're going to start building our scene. While I was at my Stampin' Cut, I cut out my 2 dolphins along with some of the die cut images that go with this bundle. And so I'm going to add a little detail to them by simply picking up some color and rubbing it along the edges with my blending brush. This will give it a little bit of depth that will allow my scene to kind of pop a little bit more. So I'm going to take that and rub it over the edges, and as you can see, that's a little different than what it looked like without that little detail. If you don't want to do this, you don't have to, but it does add a little more interest to your image because of the depth, I thought. I'm going to add some here and here, and then this other little rock, like so. And then I'm going to switch to my greenery here, and I'm going to bring these in, pick up a little bit of the summer splash and hit them on the top. Doesn't have to be perfect, just adding some shading to these little seaweeds and seagrasses, like so. I've got that done, and I can even add a little bit of my crumb cake here to the outside edge of my coral reef, just to add a little bit of shading, like so. There we go. You can play with the shading and see how you like it, and if you feel it adds some dimension to your project. Oops, I want to add a little bit more to this on this outside edge here. This is more subtle because this ink pad is a little drier. So there we go. I've got that done, and I'm ready to set my ink aside and bring in my mini dimensionals. Okay, I'm going to bring in my scene here, and I'm going to start building. Now the main thing is you want to keep things off of the score lines for the two sides. So you'll want to place this evenly, and I'm going to do it about 1/4 of an inch up. Since this piece is going to go in front of it, I want to cover it some, but not completely put it at the bottom edge. I want some height to it. So I'm going to add a little bit of adhesive, and as long as you're doing this lightly, the multi-purpose shouldn't leak through. You can also use our adhesive sheets, which are wonderful. I'm going to slide this over because once again, I don't want it touching the score lines, and place it where I want it, and then burnish. At this point, I'm going to add one of these little rocks, I think, here on the side. And this I do want to ground because I want the different heights, so you can see where that'll help. I'm just going to add a little bit of adhesive here in the center, and I'm only adding it in the center because I want to be able to tuck things behind it, such as my little grass here. So I'm going to add a little bit of adhesive to this, lift slightly, and tuck, like so. And then this one I think I'm going to put in the front. Now I'm not adding a lot of depth or dimensionals on this particular scene because I'm going to have that other piece in the front, and I can pop those up. I've got that done, and I'm going to add one of these rocks over here again. Let's see. And actually, I can take my paper snips and cut to shorten this one and add it like so. And this little piece here, I'm going to actually add right here on the other side. And I don't know if you're used to this or not, but I love my Take a Pick tool. It allows me to pick up these little pieces like this and place them exactly where I want to do. And that allows me to keep that line in there so that my little piece is on the correct side of that score line. I think I'm going to take a little one of my plants again and place it here in the front. Next, I'm going to add my little fish. Now these 3 little fish are adorable, and of course you can have them going different ways. You get 2 of these for each time you cut with your die, which is great. It makes cutting them out quick and easy. And I'm simply going to add my 3 little dots here, pick up my fish, place it right there on the glue as I need it. And of course I'm aiming for that back because that's my larger cardstock area. And I'm going to pick up that 3rd one and place it like so. I think I'm going to move him back slightly. I've got a little bit of working time because my multi-purpose does not dry immediately, which allows you a little bit of wiggle room, which is part of what I love about the multi-purpose. Last but not least, I'm going to add my dolphin. Now I'm going to add my dolphin onto the background. I'm going to pop him up though with a couple of dimensionals because I do want to add a little bit of lift to him. So I'm using my minis for this so that I can tuck them in easily. I'm going to pick him up and put him right there in the middle of my scene. I've got that finished. I'm ready to work on my sand. Now, the easiest way to do this would be to place it here in the front so you can see what you're going to be looking at and adding depth. So I'm going to slide that down, and those two score lines are on the outside edges. So I'm going to take my little lump of sand here and add a little bit of adhesive to it. And I'm going to put this flat down onto this panel like so. And then I'm going to take the second piece that I did and I'm going to pop him up. But before I adhere him down, I am going to add my greenery to my scene. I'm going to take this piece and add it right about here with a little bit of adhesive. So it looks like so. Sorry, my fingers are starting to get a little sticky, so I'm picking things up. And then I can add this lump right in front of it. And for my little seashell, I'm going to flip him over and add a dimensional and pop him, let's see, like so. There we go. I've got that side finished and I'm ready to work on the far side here. To take my first bit of seaweed, and I'm actually going to tuck it behind the scene. So I'm going to add a little bit of adhesive here and set it down in the back. And I'm going to turn it slightly. And then I'm going to take this second piece and add a little adhesive here and place it on the front, like so. Remember, you want to keep it on the one side of that score line, so you might need to adjust. And then I'm going to take my little lobster that I die cut and I'm going to add some dimensionals to the back of him. Now I'm just adding the two of them to his back to give him some support, and that should be okay on the front. And so I'm going to place that little guy right here in front of that greenery. At this point, I am ready to add my piece of acetate. Now for this acetate, I'm going to do it before I attach this to the card, only to make it a little easier. So I'm going to flip this over and bring in my mini glue dots and put one on each end. Okay, I'm going to take my mini glue dots here and I am going to adhere this right down to the left of this score line, and I can go a little below so that I've got plenty of room. Now that I have that on there, I'm going to attach this to my card simply because it'll be easier to line this acetate up. I'm going to use the tear and tape simply because I don't want to use or have the dry time that the multi-purpose would be. And I'm going to add those to the back here, remove the backing, flip it over, and I'm going to attach this to the back of the card like so, lining up that score line and the bottom edge. I've got that done, and this is where this score line might not match up exactly, which is why the bending with your fingers might be a little better. I want this to be able to fold flat, and if you notice, if I do it exactly, it doesn't lay flat. So I'm going to turn this over, line up the edges, and I'm simply going to take my bone folder and rub it along that edge a little bit and then fold over. And that gives me a flatter card here. At this point, I can add my adhesive. Okay, I've got the adhesive off the back. Sorry, it's taking a little longer than normal. I don't have full function yet on my left arm, and I'm going to adhere that. And then I've got this little bend here in my card, and I'm ready to add the top strip. So I am going to add the adhesive onto the back side here, and this time I'm going to use my multi-purpose. I'm going to lay that down and touch, and I just want to make sure I'm going to go around that edge and line it up and squeeze. And at this point, I can take my little acetate piece here, straighten it up the way I want. And let's see, I need to move this down a little bit. So I'm going to move it down here. So if that bothers you, wait until you get to this point to add it. I'm going to press down there, and then I'm going to take my little strip here again, fold it flat, bring in that bone folder, line it up, and roll it over the edge, making sure I've got it nice and flat. Now, if these two pieces bother you, we can add a little bit of piece of the paper that we made quickly and easily just by doing a little 1/2-inch strip here that would cover those. I happen to have 2 of those little strips here. These are optional. It's what you like. If those little tabs bother you, go ahead and create these little strips. If not, you can leave it without, no problem. And as you can see, it kind of covers that edge and gives you a little bit of color also. And of course, if you wanted to go an extra step, you could add a little bit of color to the signature panel also if you would like. There you go. Just to show you an option to cover those little spots if that bothers you. All right, we've got this over here and we're ready to add our last dolphin. Now this dolphin is going to float on this piece of acetate. And so all I need to do is decide about where I want to put him. And I want him a little below the other dolphin, and so that they kind of look like they're swimming together. So I'm going to pick up my mini glue dot and touch, and then right above it, touch again. This is a 1/2-inch strip, so I don't have a ton of wiggle room here. And I want to make sure those are lined up with my acetate and press down so that I don't disrupt the background. If that is a concern, you could bring in your silicone sheet, slide it in here so that you're not going to be affecting your ocean image there. And there you go. I've got this wonderful little card that'll stand up and gives you this beautiful scene. I hope you've enjoyed this project, creating this 1/2 hexagon pop-up card using the Friendly FINS stamp set and coordinating dies. And of course, if you'd like any of these products, feel free to stop by my online store. You can get there from my blog, Stamp with Jini. Thanks for joining me.